What about recording? Okay, thanks, Guillaume. Okay, so welcome to this TSC. First of all, I'm checking about the voting participant. We have a representative from TIM, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, Ericsson and Nokia, if I'm not wrong. So we have, in case we would need any vote, the quorum.
Hey, I just joined. My name is Ashan. I'm representing Swisscom.
Okay, welcome.
Thanks.
Nice to see new participant. Okay, first of all, I remind that we are following the Linux Foundation Europe policies, and at this link you can find all the rules. The next TSC, due to the vacation period, will be at the beginning of September. We think it would not be useful to have other meetings during the end of July and August. So we will start again on the 4th of September. And as general news, we will have at the end of this TSC a presentation, a proposal for a new working group inside of Sylva regarding the management of automation for the instantiation of CNF. And we will have this at the end of the alignment from the different work groups. And just an anticipation of for the next TSC at the beginning of September, we will have another presentation with a proposal for potential inclusion in Sylva of some activities regarding B2B use cases, in particular on the networking aspects, that could be complementary to the also to the already started activity on host-based routing that was proposed by Deutsche Telekom a few weeks ago, and that has already started inside the Workgroup 1. So we will have in September this presentation. We don't have any update from the board meeting because due to the vacation, the last meeting has been cancelled, so we don't have any update from the board. And then I would move to the update from the first work group, the cloud stack development. I think that Mathieu is.
So Mathieu is off, and Christy Manda will present this part. And I think you can refresh your screen.
Okay.
I've just also mentioned normally a point towards the last minutes of book concerning HBR, so he can comment also this part. But Christy, if you can comment for group 1.
Yes, the new release touched great majority of blocking points that we had, the stabilization of the product and stabilization of the CI, the testing of it. This version is not including many developments, but we were more focused on stabilizing the product and making it more robust, and also supporting the upgrade from the v1.1.0 to this one. We are aiming for the v1.2 to include some development and some improvements of what we have today. But I think this is it. I'm not sure we have some exact points that we want to touch, because in the final weeks we freezed everything and we didn't want to merge anything that could bring some drawbacks on what we have today and break things that are working. So we will start from now, because we put the tag and start reviewing and merging the great big MRs that are waiting for this. On the HBR POC, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not aware of it, so I cannot develop it.
It was for Vuk. If you want to comment, we can change, of course, this part.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Guillaume. So we are progressing nicely, actually, after initial steps in which we had quite a few clarifications, reviews of design and the setup that is necessary for the lab. We are now heading towards implementation. We have Samuel and Vlad from Orange in the activity, and also Sixwind is participating actively into it. So we just had today our regular bi-weekly POC call for the realization of the POC for host-based routing in the Sylva Validation Center in Paris. And we have a rough estimate that the first cluster with installed host-based routing and prepared test cases for start of the POC evaluation could be there until mid of September. Why does it take longer than it would usually be expected? The validation center team needs to build a completely or to reconfigure the network fabric to make it suitable for a layer 3 for the modern data center setup. And then in that fabric, the cluster needs to be created, and on top we need to install the host-based routing stack. So it took some time. The licenses on the switching and routing equipment were needed, and then these kind of things. But now we clarify all the things, and looking forward. Of course, the summer break will slow things a bit down in August, I guess, but we are still positive that in September we are going to start hands-on testing.
Okay, thanks, Vuk.
One thing that I think could be added on this next chapter is the support for immutable OSs. We are working with SUSE for Leap Micro and with Red Hat for CentOS Core, and I think the progress is doing pretty well, and probably we could support this on v1.2.
Okay. Is there any question or comment for Christian or Vuk about work group 1? If not, I'm seeing in the chat the request from Francois regarding the RFE that has been proposed by Canonical. for an additional flavor for Kubernetes flavor for Sylva. I think that we could have time today to have a short update, but as mentioned by Guillaume, neither Mathieu nor Luis, that was also one of the proposers, are connected today. So maybe it could be a point to be discussed also on the next TSC. I don't know, Francois, what is your opinion about it?
I just saw the message from Guillaume. Hi, everybody. Hi, Guillaume. Indeed, if we need Mathieu Rohan to be present, no problem to postpone it to the 3rd of September.
Okay, so we will add this point for sure in the agenda for the TSC on the 4th of September.
Okay.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so we can move to workgroup 2, the validation center, but there is no update, and Luis is not. I think he's on vacation. So I don't.
On this, I read the last minutes. There were 2 points concerning the validation platform. One for Telefonica. They were about opening a new platform. And one other is on Telecom Italia validation center platform. Perhaps you can give a word.
Regarding our platform, we have some progress in the sense that we received the servers and the hardware, and we are installing it. So I hope that after the summer we will be able to start using it.
And to remain, is it on top of vSphere or on bare metal?
No, it will be on bare metal.
Okay.
On bare metal with Dell servers.
Great. Great news. Thanks.
Okay, the next workgroup is workgroup 3, and again, unfortunately, Mihai had a last-minute problem, so he is not able to participate, and he didn't manage also to give updates. So I think we have to postpone the updates to the next TSC unless there is anyone who has some direct update on this workgroup.
Yeah, so there was the follow-up meeting today. So Mihai was participating to this meeting, and so I hope you'll have in the minutes some fresh update on this workgroup.
Okay, so if he can add some update, we will publish it in the minutes. Thanks. Okay, regarding workgroup 4, I don't see Wamin also. And I'm not aware of the activities. I think that there has been, but maybe more than 1 week ago, a meeting, but I'm not aware of any particular update. So I'm afraid that also about this workgroup, we will be very fast. And we can move to the last workgroup. Here we have Andre, so we can, I leave you the floor for the updates.
Yes. This meeting is being quick. So
yes.
In the communication and adoption, I want to bring good news. So we were a finalist in the first Suzy Choice Awards, Sylva, and we won 3 prizes on 2 catalysts on DTWTM forum. So we implemented Sylva on two catalysts. One of them was the SATCOM, the 5G Anywhere. So Sylva was being implemented as the 5G core on top of Sylva. This was to simulate a connection from the order management until the implementation of 5G. A lot of fuzz about this, and the other one was the autonomous network, the hyperloops. It was also to be the 5G core on top of Sylva, that was orchestrated and to create a virtual command center as a service. So basically, to have a NOC for fires or natural disasters that the network configure itself. So it won 2 awards for the SATCOM and 1 award in the autonomous network. It was very good because on DTW, many people saw Sylva. Many people asked what was Sylva, which is good. We explain the importance. And as next steps, we are preparing Sylva Dev Days in Open Source Summit after August. Don't forget to register. I put the link here on the minutes, so you can click it and you can register there. And also, we are preparing the NetworkX event that will also be there. So in terms of presentations on Open Source Summit, we will be in with a table presenting Sylva that the Linux Foundation got us a space there. So we are very happy also to have it there. Any suggestions? Again, any suggestions or anything that you want to propose? We are open, but we are closing this preparation. So be quick if you have something, and we are open to any kind of suggestions or topics to be addressed.
Okay, thanks, Andre. A lot of good news.
Yes.
Question regarding the Sylva Dev Days on Open Source Summit. So this is the different event than the mini summit, or it's the same?
This is the mini summit. So
okay.
The OSS, the open source. I'm going to use my
Open Source Summit.
Yeah. Open Source Summit is going to be. I want to give the exact date.
In Vienna on
in Vienna, yes,
19th of September, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. But this is then a mini summit and not the Dev Days.
Yeah.
Per se. Okay.
It's the mini summit. Yes, yes. We already have some registration, and also we have the agenda being prepared. Okay, so I think already passed from everyone the agenda of what the topics that we'll deep dive on this.
Maybe update on that one from my side. I took one slot on that, which I wanted to realize with NTT Docomo together, kind of to bring them closer also to the Sylva community. But I'm not sure at the end if they will make it because of their schedule.
Okay.
Still waiting until end of this week, but if that doesn't come, then I'll focus on a most likely networking topic for that slot.
Okay, perfect. We are still in terms of agenda, we still have this blocked with you and NTT for the third topic of deep dive. Okay. Just to clarify, everyone, I was in the notes. This is going to be on the September 19th in Austria, Vienna. Okay, just to clarify, everyone, I was getting to my notes. So many events, and sometimes we get lost on the dates.
And Andre and Naomi, so when should we fix the agenda?
We are going to have the meeting tomorrow, the weekly meeting, but I would say with 1 month in advance. So since we are on vacation, we will send the part to close this in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Okay.
Having in mind that many people are on vacation out of office,
yeah.
So
yeah, because Team Ernisch has a demo, and I am studying and team is not aware yet. I'm studying to merge my demo with its demo, so we have to discuss about this.
Okay. So we have this as the first part, the introduction, Sylva results.
Yeah, we should have a demo on the last topic of this TSC about network functions lifecycle management. So I think it's also something we can have for this meeting.
Okay, so maybe tomorrow we close this and we send a final note to everyone. We just podcast this. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Andre. Any other comment for Workgroup 5? If not, then I think we completed the workgroup description very quick this time. And so we have plenty of time for the presentation of the proposal on the GitOps CNF management. I don't know who is going to present.
It's me. So hello.
Hello,
everybody. You can see my slide. Yeah, you can see. Okay.
Yes.
So hello everybody. So my name is Morgan Shaw. So I recognize I know some of you on the bridge. I used to work for OPNEV and ONAP a very long time ago. I'm coming back to Linux Foundation with a proposal, a working group proposal for Sylva. So the idea is to address CNF management on top of Sylva project. So I will give you some detail. So Orange is using Sylva as a baseline for our telco Kubernetes cluster, and we start hosting different vendor CNF, vendor and also vendor or homemade tools. So we develop some tooling and we deploy it also on top of Sylva. And we start developing a kind of, let's say, PaaS layer. It's not the right name, but an overlay of applicative overlay to the Sylva Kubernetes to address the CNF. This project started almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And the idea was to really adopt an IT standards and IT way to deploy CNF, cloud native CNF using GitOps. So we just developed a set of components. We did not really develop, we integrate lots of CNCF components that we put together. We create some glue in order to be able to manage end user journey. And the goal was to let our colleagues deploy using GitOps CNF on top of Kubernetes cluster, a Sylva Kubernetes cluster. So it consists mainly in YAML file. So in GitOps, everything is YAML file. So a Kubernetes descriptor to deploy a set of CNCF components. I will detail a little bit the list of components, but as a GitOps engine, we integrate Flux CD, Istio for service mesh in order to have a de facto security layer, Arbor for external secret, secure codebox, lots of things, best of breed of what we can find in the CNCF on top of a Kubernetes cluster. So if we look today, it's about 80% of the same components are the same in a Sylva management cluster. You will find Flux, you will find Arbor, you will find cert manager. There is nothing rocket science because the components we integrate are the standard Kubernetes component. It's really focusing on GitOps methodology. So the idea is to have the same way to deploy CNF. Most of the telco vendor decided to now to provide solutions that are deployed on top of Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is providing some of the feature of the product. So we get some end chart or Kubernetes operator, but time progressively it becomes more and more cloud native. So it's possible to do GitOps. And really the goal is to offer an automation solution for CNF deployment or test workload, because we use the solution for both, either to deploy a function or to trigger a test workload or deploy some test in order to be able to test our 5G core or things like that. So internally in Orange, we receive a green light to open source this part and to contact the Sylva community, because it sounds natural to we already were working closely to the Sylva Orange team. So our PTL, Sylvain Diburo, is discussing for a long time with Thomas Morin, François Elouette, on the people that are involved in the development. And they already share their view. So historically, it was not open source. As we came from Linux Foundation project, Sylvain Diburo was the OM PTL in ONAP, so he was in charge of the Kubernetes integration. And I was the test PTL, integration test PTL. So naturally, we suggest to go directly to open source when we start the project, assuming that we are really leveraging only open source component from the CNCF. So at the beginning, it was decided to remain inner source, and then the decision changed only a few months ago. So we always had it in mind, but we need to have a legal green light for that, and we got them in June this year. So that's why we are contacting you now. From a very high-level perspective, so what we call the NIF tooling zone, so let's say the application layer we deploy on top of Kubernetes. Globally, it's kind of, we have a GitOps engine, so that's we select Flux CD, we evaluate Argo and Flux, and finally we decided to use Flux CD. We have a set of tools of what we call the Cloud Native Toolbox. So it's a Arbor for the registry. We use also some GitLab Runner operator for if we want to provide some CI automation like. And we have additional components. So that's the one that are very close also to Sylva. We have an observability stack based on, as usual, Prometheus, Alert Manager, Grafana Agent, etc., Tempo, Loki, or whatever. We have some security components, and we integrate Noi Vector, Secure Code Box, all these kind of things. And we have some utils, some operators. So all the solution itself is deployed on top of a Sylva Kubernetes and is deployed itself using GitOps. So that's why we develop a lot of YAML manifests that we are about to open source in order to share them. And we saw during the last KubeCon that this kind of approach was shared by several people, so several companies. So we say it's a good moment to try to federate this kind of initiative. So we are in the middle. Of course, there are in the picture, there are GitLab, and we have lots of managed services we rely on, but that's a really standard IT services, such as we need a Git hosting infrastructure. So it can be gitlab.com, it can be any GitLab. We use also a default standard like OpenConnect for the authentication. For the storage is standard with S3 storage. External secret, we based our secret management either on Vault for the NIF tuning itself, and we can also consider somehow GitLab CI for some secret store when it's not critical. So we have different managed services, but we can plug any external services. There is no dependency towards any Orange enabler. That's really typical standard stuff. So we need an IDM because we are managing a user, but we can plug any IDM. The same, the infrastructure, we deploy this on top of Sylva. We can deploy on any Kubernetes. There is no dependency, but of course, as on the management cluster, we have very similar element. We'd like also to have some convergence at this level. And from this path, you can deploy CNF on top of a remote Kubernetes cluster. And you can also trigger test on CNF, but also on VNF, on PNF. Yeah, it will depend on what kind of test you are running, but any kind of test workload can be executed. So Kubernetes, yes, is a new standard. So I think we all agree on that. So that's why some teams internally start developing vendor intents, and for 5G, and I think it's same for all the telco. And we see in the TMF forum or in any KubeCon some demo. So the difficulty is to convince the traditional vendor to use Kubernetes natively. I used to work for Siemens Network a long time ago. So I used to work for vendor, and of course they will not switch all their code from legacy code to microservices code just because it's nice. And so it will take time to go to a full cloud native ecosystem. But we can see that since we started, so as I say, almost 3 years ago, at the beginning, it was very difficult to integrate vendor functions just because there were more sort of transport of legacy code from VM to container, but we start getting more and more cloud native function. Open source is important for us because we believe that it could help us to have a reference implementation. Even with a single flux, we can start with a single flux. There's no problem with that. And the idea is also to convince the CNF vendor to adopt this approach and to progressively work on better Helm chart, on better operator, and all these things. So it's purely IT. There is nothing telco here. I remember during an OpenStack summit in Paris in 2012, I think people from Red Hat say we are not special. So we believe also we are not so special. So there is nothing, there is no hidden protocol. Everything is really IT. And as I said, we saw on different forums that this approach using a GitOps engine has been also developed by other companies. So the idea will be just here to aggregate and to try to find the best of breed, put it in Sylva, and provide a reference implementation. So concretely, what are we about to open source? So it's a bit small here, but if you look at, you should consider this part as a sort of a big recipe of ingredients coming from the NIF tooling zone. Here you can see most of the logos that we integrate for our needs. So Istio for service mesh, I say we have a portal based on Homer, which is also a CNCF product. The idea is that end user can connect securely to this workload cluster, including this kind of add-ons. And on this workload cluster, they have only access to their automation resource. So they can do some flux, but they will have only access to their own resource. And from these resources, they can deploy automatically or upgrade or manage the lifecycle management of the CNF. So we have quite about 20 to 30 components, so 30 recipe in order to integrate in GitOps the different components and to build at the end a solution that can be used by end user. So this will be open source during summer. As I said, we got the green light. We take some time just because before open sourcing, of course, we need to clean up and to add all the license and the copyright and everything in order to be compliant with the rules of the open source communities. So we start doing that. We are almost finished. So we may expect to expose at least our first operator before the end of this month. Because you look here, that's a component we integrate as such and coming from the upstream communities. But for example, for Arbor, so the registry, we develop an operator, a Kubernetes operator, in order to be able to manage the group, the project in Arbor, in GitOps. So when an operator was already existing, of course, we reused it. And when it was not possible to get one, or when it was not good enough, or it was just a very first draft, we develop some. So we develop an operator for Homer, for Arbor, and for Nexus. As you know, Nexus, it's not really cloud native, but it can be useful in some cases. And we have some legacy in our network when we are using Nexus, so the open source version of Nexus. And sometimes we need to manage things in GitOps. So we need to convert the API that are providing by the component into CRDs, and that's what we did. And this kind of, this part also we plan to open source it. We didn't plan, we will open source it.
So our working group proposal would like to bootstrap a working group to discuss with the companies we saw in KubeCon that were already involved in this area, to discuss with them and to converge to a reference implementation that we could put on top of a Sylva workload cluster. So when you deploy a Sylva, you have this management cluster first, and then you can deploy any workload cluster. We could have a CNF automation workload cluster, and it should be interesting to also be aligned between the version of we integrate into the management cluster and the one that will be in the workload cluster. So the idea is to really try to see with the community how we could manage that, if it makes sense for the community to have that. We saw we start doing stuff with our affiliate in Orange, and we deploy, for example, some part of 5G even in production, but we need still to consolidate that, and the more telcos we are, the better it will be, especially to discuss with a vendor. So I already take the best of breed. So we are coming with quite a lot of code, but we plan to expose it first on GitLab.com in Orange Open Source Group. The idea is not necessarily to take everything, but to discuss if this component makes sense, we take it. We just have some informal discussion with other vendors. We know, for example, that some telcos are using test cubes that we were not using. So we are open to any contribution. The idea is to have something we can deploy easily on GitOps on top of a Sylva cluster. Okay, so the decision here is we are waiting for the TSC to get a go or no go on this working group, as I say, to discuss if it makes sense for the Sylva community to have it. And I have also one last slide, because people may ask the question, the positioning of this initiative versus Nefio. So as you know, Nefio, Eric is on the bridge. I don't know if you want to introduce that, because you are... I can continue. I understood, but
you are the man.
Yeah,
okay.
Just to say that yes, between Nefio and Sylva, so we had some previous meetings, some coordination. We know well that both, let's say, projects are based on the same approach, typically using Kubernetes as a management plane. We are also using GitOps for the deployment model, and also many integration of CNCF components. So globally, I think Nefio and Sylva are very aligned on the spirit of the activity. Now Nefio has selected a specific package for the CNF. So it is namely KPT on this package that is intended to avoid the complexity of Helm is not today well accepted by the ecosystem. And that's something that we are suffering, I mean, in the Nefio community, because the vendors have not adopted this package because they invested in the Helm packaging. Meanwhile, in Nefio, we started to have options to use Helm package, but to be honest, it's not very optimized solutions. So for us, Nefio is really a project very interesting to propose a more long-term vision to tackle quite complex network configuration when we need to deploy a large number of network functions in a large number of distributed clusters. So typically like Orange solution, and Nefio has put a lot of efforts in a run since release 2, and typically also to be able to manage a state dynamic configuration for the parameter for the CNF, depending on the cluster on which they will be deployed. So we still believe that Nefio has still let's say some activity, let's say for long term to solve some issues that will not be solved in Sylva. And also Nefio is also working on what we call the Kubernetes resource model for 3GPP on ORAN network function, typically for the configuration part. And it's really a good place where we define how to model the Kubernetes model for the configuration and to avoid any vendor to come with their own, let's say, implementation of a Kubernetes model for the configuration part, because 3GPP today did not define that. And also Nefio proposed some, let's say, some Kubernetes operator to demonstrate how we can, let's say, leverage these concepts, but it's mainly based on, let's say, on open source component today. And we believe also that also Nefio and Sylva should be aligned typically on the GitOps controller choice. So today in Sylva, we are using Flux. In Nefio, we started with config sync, and there is also some POC to demonstrate how we can use Argo CD or Flux, but it's not the mainstream. And globally also, we believe that for all the components, for the security, observability, and so on, that are very useful for the management cluster in Nefio and Sylva, we may use the same kind of components. So just to say that Nefio and Sylva can be very complementary, we believe that what we did in Orange and with discussing with other telco, we need to address a short-term solution to deal with our, let's say, favorite vendors that invested a lot in their packaging based on typically on Helm, and that's something we can leverage as fast as possible with the solution we propose.
Okay. And if I summarize, Nefio will address complex things. Our proposal is relatively simple, but I like simplicity. I used to work in an app, so I know what is complexity. But here it's really piping things relatively easily. Okay, that's what I say. We organize lots of training on this NIF tooling zone. And what we used to say after the 3 days, when people start understanding how GitOps is working, we say we are very sorry because it's very stupid. We are just implementing a bot that will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to do the toil. So just keeping doing Helm install, Helm upgrade, or kubectl apply -f, whatever. So it's relatively stupid, but this stupidity is very powerful. And I think it makes sense to have it on top of on Sylva. And as far as I understand what is done by the other telco, that's also this approach has been selected, interested. It does not mean that, of course, we should not study things that are more complex with a better understanding of the topology, with complex things to coordinate. Here, for example, we will not have this notion of orchestration that lots of telco are dreaming of for decades now, when you have just one button in order to reconfigure all your fabric, your router, everything. So no, it's really addressing the cloud native functions. But if it does it, and if it does it well, I think it will be very interesting, and it will help us to harmonize the way we deploy these kind of things. It will harmonize the way we manage the complexity of the CNF. Today, when you deploy a CNF, the CNF comes with values.yaml with thousands of parameters. And if you use middleware to manage that, and you have middleware from any vendor, at the end, it's a nightmare to manage. So the proposal is to have something that can be used and really leverage the power of Kubernetes and the power of Sylva, of course. So we hope to see you in Vienna. So I will not be there, but the PTL, so Sylvain de Bureau, hopefully will be there to exchange and to do some demo. And hopefully the code will be fully available at this stage. The code will be exposed during summer, as I say, so it's in an open source group in Orange for the moment. And that's it. And there are some questions, I think. Yeah. Buck?
Hello, I'm Bogojnić from Deutsche Telekom. I need to ask some questions to understand a bit better what this exactly is. If you go back to the page where you have a list of all the components, so you are talking here about the portfolio, the bundle of all these or some of these components to be installed on top of a Kubernetes cluster, in this case, Sylva cluster, right?
Yes. You can mix and match. You don't have to have all of them. Some are mandatory. For example, we already, for the security, as it's a path open to end user. For example, Istio is really key for our need. But Keycloak, you can use an external Keycloak if needed. It can be discussed, but it means that here
so it's a kind of app store for your cluster. Because I got some question marks looking at the harbor, so it's typically something that you would not implement in the workload cluster. You would rather use centrally, Keycloak, same things and so on, but like Istio and some other components makes a lot of sense. What is installation mechanism?
So it's GitOps, it's pure GitOps. We have a Flux on all these components are installed using GitOps. Maybe I can share directly the code if you are.
You have hand releases and the customizations.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, now comes the interesting question towards the Sylva team. What's the way of Sylva to install these components in the workload cluster? Is it defined already, or there should be some work on a glue how to get these components automatically on the cluster creation in the workload cluster?
I think that some of the components are installed automatically in the workload cluster, but with the purpose of supporting the control of the infrastructure, not for being used by the application. At least the main purpose is to monitor and give information about the infrastructure.
Yeah, on that what I was saying, we already know that there is already some functions that are available in the management cluster. So the idea also, if the working group is if you think it's interesting, it's also to be sure that we have only one. We have the same tools. We are not two different stack. And today it's the case. I would say that the components are the same. Regarding the fact to install Arbor on a workload cluster, on our side, we don't necessarily need it, of course, if a registry is already available. But as I say, the project started before even we were able to use Sylva and have an Arbor on the management cluster. So we use even remote registry. But we use mainly this registry as a proxy cache when we deploy the workload cluster. So it can be interesting if you deploy, if you bootstrap a workload cluster from a management cluster, and then you adjust a proxy cache that is configured to the authorized registry. So that can be on the management cluster, but also on remote registry, vendor registry, can make sense just as a proxy cache for the end user. But again, it depends, and that's that can be discussed. And just to show what we have, this YAML file, for example, the external secret operator, you will find these kind of things. And inside, you have a standard Flux intents. So I would say more the application is needed, but based application, you will have the release on all the things, the M release. So that's why we plan to share. So typically,
namespaces.
Yeah, exactly. So there is nothing rocket science. Once again, it's just because there are quite a lot of applications. Applications can be seen as ingredients, and the recipe is done in another project. But everything is automated, and we are very close to the upstream. That's also one of the main difference regarding the way Sylva is building their release today. And that's also a discussion that Sylvain should have with Sylva team. On our side, we are already using GitOps, so we have several versions of each component every day. So we integrate the security patch as soon as they are available, and we have automated mechanisms to integrate them in a mainstream integration. So we have in the global recipe of this application, so the one that is composing all the component, you have several versions a day, and just because Prometheus is releasing a new security patch, if you want to avoid having hundreds of critical CVE, for us it was the only way to do that. So if I look at the application deployment, so this one will be also for everything that is under CD here will be open source.
Just maybe to clarify this, so these are the components, sort of pass App Store for a basic standard components that the CNFs can use. It doesn't bring the way to deploy CNFs and potentially orchestrate them across a few clusters.
No, you don't have any orchestration components because we didn't find any that will be good enough to do that. But no, the way to deploy, is somehow to use the GitOps way and to transform the Helm chart you have in Helm release. And this part is not part of what we are open sourcing the tool to do it, but not the recipe of the different vendors we have. So it could be a discussion at Sylva level if some vendor are interested to share that, because but here we have proprietary product, so we don't share, we just share the tool to do that. Yeah.
I'm asking because we have now several years of experience of running GitOps in production. There are always like three segments for installing what we call components or lately functions. So you have some things that Sylva already has today, CNI, CSIs, so these things that are pushed to the workload cluster. Then you have a standard components, standard functions that every new cluster gets. We do that by pushing Flux into the tenant cluster, and then this Flux from the tenant or workload cluster in the Sylva notion pulls all the components on its own. And there is also a third thing, is how you prepare the vendor artifacts and manifests in order for that to fit into GitOps mode. And there is a colleague and the entire team of 5G, they did a lot of work, and they have a recipes and let's say framework, how to structure the Helm chart, how to make umbrella Helm chart. So I'm understanding this is not targeting this first category and the third category. It's
yeah, like I think it looks really like you mentioned the second category. The second part look like this one. For the third part, we have exactly the same issue. We usually, when we want to use vendor product inside this tool, we need to review the Helm chart because they are not correct. So we need to fix some, especially duplicate keys or this kind of things that are not compatible with the parser from Helm, the YAML parcel used by Flux. So we have also some priority, but here that's not the scope of the working group. The working group is really on what you have experienced, and that's why I say we don't want to impose this. We would like to, the second part you mentioned, that several telco could bring it in Sylva, and the idea is really, because I don't know how it is in DT, but in Orange sometimes one of the answers from the vendor we have is, okay, we cannot test it, so we say just Flux, just do it using Flux, and they say, okay, but no, we don't know. If in Sylva we add this extra layer, we can imagine that then they could deploy that into a lab and fix the Helm chart before they arrive, and that we have to clean them. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I don't want to take too much time for the other questions, but I would like maybe Guillaume or Carlo. I think we should note the action point to see how these things get installed in the workload cluster in a deterministic and then standard way. Because this is the glue between Sylva workload cluster and then these repositories and this let's say these manifests.
Yes, I think that this possibility is definitely very interesting. I think it is needed some deeper discussion, also having the workgroup one participant to discuss more in detail the interactions between this and the current version of Sylva. So I think that it would be useful to have maybe I don't know if a presentation during workgroup one to have a deeper discussion, and personally, I think it would be also important to keep into account or the relationship with the Nephew, and to avoid any discussion or the impression that we are extending too much the scope, invading something that they are doing, and trying to explain the complementarity of the approach, and as you mentioned, that one approach could be with a short time vision and the other one with a longer time. I think that all these things should be clarified. From a practical point of view, I'm not sure we can take a decision now on the TSC. I personally, I'm not sure I can give a final opinion. I think it's very interesting, and I think it would be useful to have more discussion on it, not only on the TSC but maybe also on Workgroup 1. I don't know what the other things.
I also feel it might be it will be beneficial if the working group 1 on a more technical level runs once through this, and also put it into perspective of how currently the management cluster installs the component, and is it the same way to get it there. So just to not have any overlap in the scope, probably it would be good to socialize this a bit and then streamline the scope and then goals and come up for inclusion.
Okay,
Christian? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I also think that since we are using the same tools and doing practically the same stuff, I think it would be more related to the workgroup 1. I'm not sure if we need a different workgroup for this, because using Flux in the management cluster, we can deploy anything in the workload cluster. So deploying another Flux in the workload cluster, it's somehow double work.
I think you're right. We should be aligned, but I think there are a big difference, and that's what we experience for a couple of years.
Yeah,
we expect from the work group 1 that we have a solution that can be really well upgraded, maintain the infrastructure. So it's important to have also a very automated way to manage fully the infrastructure. And here, compared to the pure infrastructure, you are already end user and CNF, so you have a kind of path that is a little bit different, but of course at the same components. So they should be aligned, and I think that's why Sylvain already started discussing with Thomas and François and maybe you already, I don't know. But of course, it should be close and it should be related. But really, also, it's very important to keep in mind that we also expect from Sylva, an infrastructure that is really upgradable and easily upgradable. In a GitOps way or not, I don't know. But there are also lots of things that are not addressed in these things that is really dealing with the CNF and more an adoption from the vendor for the CNF. And there are still lots of work to do, I think, on the infra side. But fully agree that we should avoid duplicating, and that was the goal also to have this proposal, to avoid to have different silo of the same things, because at the end what is interesting is a Flux way to manage things. You can manage infrastructure, you can manage CNF, but the way you manage them and the way you interact with the different actors is a little bit different. So that's why I think it makes sense.
We need to keep these two working groups together, because we cannot have one without the other. So
yeah, sure.
Andre, you
just a note before I had a hard stop that I missed, but I think the validation center could be important. So the things that you are talking about, the vendors, we want on the validation center not only be CNFs but all the applications. This could be good in terms of when a CNF or a containerized application whatsoever use the process with Flux. So people put in a repository, they see best practice. When it's validated, they follow this process and they see the full lifecycle management of a CNF. I think it's important also the validation center to be included to see if it makes sense to put the part of GitOps, because you will have questions if you use Flux, if you use Argo, if you use, you know, we always seeing new tools and we like new tools, but you will be challenged on that. So I think it's important also to be in the validation center to have also this pipeline, this process aligned in when there is a CNF or an application that we want to put on top.
Okay, this is another interesting point. I'm afraid we are running out of time. I think that we definitely need to organize another session dedicated to the presentation of the proposal to Workgroup 1 for sure, including also the validation center as mentioned by Andre. I don't know if it is useful to do it before or during the summer, or trying to organize it towards the end of August or beginning of September.
I will make a quick survey if it's valuable, Carlo.
Mm-hmm.
And Ashan, you want to also give a feedback, quick feedback?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we discussed this internally, so we would like to have like a deep dive session on this, and also would like to hear from the other operators. Yeah, we would like to participate on the first few discussions and then take it from there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so I think we can close here. I will try to summarize some points in the minutes, and we will try to organize this this discussion because I really think this is an important topic. So sorry for being a bit late, and for those who are going on vacation, have a very good restful vacation, and see you in September for the TSC.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.